Yoshi, so good to see you.
Wow, how are you doing?
Amazing. I'm doing great. How are you? How are you, my dear?
I'm tired. But I'm very excited. I never did a podcast before.
Well, I never did a podcast either with someone who was in Gaza for a month. So I'm very, very much looking forward. So what I was thinking of doing is to just kind of introduce you and to talk a little bit about, we're friends and you listen to the podcast and you spent a month in Gaza and you're going to kind of bring us there with you. You're going to tell us what it was like and you kind of give us as much of a feeling of, what actually happened there. What happened there? What's it like? What's the spirit? What's the morale? What is actually happening on the grounds from the soldier's perspective? And we'll talk a lot about different elements. I want to hear about the military elements. I want to hear about the kind of the camaraderie amongst the troops. What's it like to be on a knife's edge, to be in Gaza? The dangers and the noises and the sounds and Shabbos in Gaza, Hanukkah in Gaza. Some of the things like what's it like to go in combat against these terrorists. So that's what I want to do. And then also hear more about like kind of your thoughts, your feelings about how this will impact, the general society after the war. What changes are you seeing in the society that you're sensing, because it's a melting pot after all. The tzava, the tzahal is a melting pot. And, Jews even non-Jews from all different parts of the country and all different parts of the society, and they're all together and they're going through this incredibly, I would say, traumatic but meaningful experience together, and that's going to change everyone's lives. So I want to hear more about that as well.
Okay. How's the Kiva doing?
He's doing great. I told him about this. He's very excited.
Yeah? Yeah. I was going to show him my gun. I was going to show him a picture.
Well, I can take a picture of that. 1 second.
Got a big scope on there.
1 second. Let me take a picture for him. 1 second. There we go. Okay. That's awesome. We got it.
And the baby, right?
Yisrael Meir is a rock star. Baruch Hashem.
And those are the only two kids that I know their names.
Akiva, Yoshua, Miriam, Shlomo, Yitzi, Rivka, and Yisrael Meir.
Wow.
And Bezrat Hashem, one more on the way, Bezrat Hashem.
Amazing. B'shat tova, b'shat tova. My brother had called me. It's a crazy story. I'll tell you about it. Basically, we left for Shabbos 1 week ago. Mm-hmm. That was the first time I left in 5 weeks. First time I was home in 5 weeks. And it was 3 weeks straight in Gaza. No cell phone, no shower. Anyway, so it was a crazy story. I'll tell you about it. But my dad ended up picking me up, basically. And it was like 6 minutes till Shabbos. He gives me the phone. It was my older brother. And he basically told me that my sister-in-law is expecting.
Oh, that's exciting news.
Crazy. Yeah.
Well, what about your younger brother who's there in Gaza with you? Is he fighting alongside you?
So my younger brother, he's in Shechem right now instead of Gaza.
Oh, okay, he's not in Gaza.
Yeah, he had like a whole story basically. Like he was in a unit, then he left that unit, was switching, and he wanted to join mine. In the end, it's a good thing that he didn't, because we actually had a set of brothers in my unit, and as we were getting ready to go into Gaza, they said you can't both go in. They said they wouldn't take two brothers in the same unit, and one of them had to choose. They had to choose which one would not come in. After a long time, they debated, and in the end, they both didn't go in. They decided to go out together. And then after like 2 weeks, one of them actually came. I guess the other one's like, okay, fine, you can have it.
Well, each one wanted to go, or each one didn't want to go? Or
Each one wanted to go. Each one wanted to go. They couldn't decide which one would get to go, which one wouldn't get to go.
And the army doesn't want them because it's dangerous?
Because they didn't want to put two brothers in the same unit together inside war.
Yeah. Wow. It's real stuff, and this is real war. It's real war.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Contrary to what they tell you, war is not fun.
It's not.
Yeah. I'm not even like the furthest deep in. Like the mandatory conscripts, the guys in the Sadir service, they're like deeper in doing what's called the Tamrun. It's like the invasion or whatever. And I was a little bit further out from them. Although my unit was the most southern Kochotzal inside Gaza. Like beyond us, there was no Kochotzal, more further south.
Wow. So you went by Wadi Gaza. You went across from east to west.
From like Be'eri.
Yeah. From Be'eri, yeah. Because they came on three different axes, like two from the north, and you cut through cut through Gaza. Wow.
Right.
Amazing.
I went on foot. There was no road or anything. It was just dirt. And then when I left, they had been building this road, this logistics road, which is what I was doing. I was like protecting that road, which is very, very important. And when we left, it was like a road, basically. I mean, it's gravel, but it's like a road.
So you went on foot? You didn't have an APC, no tank, no nothing?
On foot.
Wow. How many soldiers are walking together on foot here across Gaza?
I mean, my immediate unit's 100 guys. Like, there's about 20 guys in my team, 100 guys in my unit, but then we're part of a bigger thing, which is like 400 guys, part of a bigger,
Yeah, like, brigade, division, army, platoon, right, company, etc. Exactly. Wow. And you're not worried about, I mean, you just cross over into Gaza. There could be mines on the floor. There could be booby traps. There could be tunnels anywhere. There could be snipers anywhere, right?
Oh, there are. There are all those things. In terms of mines, when we walked in, so we weren't the first people to walk that path. They already had like vehicles clear it so that there weren't any mines. And snipers and all of that were not likely because of where we were. We had already cleared that area. But tunnels are a major problem. They could pop up anywhere. Like, did you see on the news there was mechablim that came up inside of a soldier's like encampment? Yeah,
I saw that. That was crazy.
That was the guys right next to me.
Are you serious?
I was 100 meters away from them.
Yeah. So let me describe what I saw. You see, it looks like it's a periscope. It's a little camera coming out.
Yeah.
And it does a little rotation, and you see soldiers everywhere. And you see soldiers, a few feet away. And that was a video recorded by Hamas?
By Hamas.
Wow. So why didn't they attack? Or did they?
So at that point, they hadn't finished digging yet. They just dug and then stuck that little camera up. And then they didn't attack yet. Honestly, I don't know why they didn't attack right there. Like, finish digging, or maybe they wanted to wait. I don't know.
Wow.
But it was pretty crazy.
Wow. Well, Yoshi, let me introduce you. And I think we'll just keep this part in the podcast. It's going to be a fun conversation. I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited to introduce my friend Yoshi Rosenbluth. He's a dear friend, a long-time listener of the podcasts, an IDF sharpshooter who spent a month in Gaza. Like you said, it was a month with no showers, no cell phone, and you're at war, and war is not fun. It's glamorized, of course, by the movies, and I have to say, it does feel a little bit glamorous, because you're there and you're fighting and your life is really meaningful. It's terrifying. It's dangerous. And you never know if you'll make it to the next day. But there's something very powerful about being someone who is doing something to save and to protect and to guard the homeland and to guard the Jewish people and the Jewish state. So that is beautiful, even though it's not glamorous. And we're going to talk today, please God, about the military aspects of the war. But really, I want to get a sense of what it's like on the ground, what it's like with the soldiers in the tanks, in the APCs, in the units, in Gaza, surrounded by a hornet's nest of terrorists, what things are like. And I want to start off by thanking you. I think on behalf of Torch, of course, but it's really representing all of us. You're one of the listeners. And you're there on the ground. I want to tell you that you're representing all of us. And we want to thank you. We appreciate what you're doing. We love you. And you warriors on the ground in Gaza, you're the real heroes protecting our communities, protecting the Medina, the state, protecting the innocent Jews. And I want to start off just by thanking you on behalf of all of us at Torch and across the entire broad, distributed Torch family across the world.
Thank you, Rav. That means a great deal to me. I want to share everything with you, honestly. But I'll introduce myself real quick. I'm a longtime listener, and your podcasts have been an enormous influence on my life and my afterlife. I was born in Baltimore, and I moved to Israel about 11 years ago. I was 15, and my life was a big roller coaster. I went to a bunch of schools, and I ended up joining the Army. I got into a special unit, and I was in the Army about 3 years and 3 months. I did a little bit of extra time. I'd gotten injured in the middle, and after the Army, I finished in February of 2020. My friends and I did a little trip to Bulgaria, went snowboarding. It was really fun. And then I went to America for a wedding for a childhood friend of mine for 3 weeks, round trip ticket, 3 weeks, March 2020. A week later, COVID hit, return flight canceled. I spent a year and a half in America. And during that time, I was doing all kinds of jobs, and I was doing landscaping for one of my childhood friends. And so I was wearing my headphones about 11 hours a day. And then instead of music, I started listening to podcasts. And I like history, so I found a podcast called Famous Figures, which is just all kinds of famous people throughout history. And then I'm like, after about 40 hours, I'm like, let me try to find something Jewish. And that's when I found the Jewish History podcast. I plowed through that podcast and then Torah 101. Anyway, about 400 hours of podcasts later, I find myself in Aisha Torah and the Foundations program, which absolutely, absolutely changed my life and my afterlife, like I said earlier. But it really started with your podcast. I'm what they call FFB, from birth. But it turns out that there was a lot of foundational stuff that I was missing. For example, you mentioned how the Mishnah is the oral Torah written down. And that may be obvious or common knowledge, but I didn't know that, and I'm like, I have a lot of catching up to do, I'm just the kind of person that I have to know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And, I had to understand, is this real? Is this true? By this, I mean, what we call God in Torah, Judaism. And that's where Torah 101 really comes in, by the way. So I joined the Foundations program, which I got very, very, very good explanations to my questions. And my life has been totally, totally different since joining Aish. And I continued with the podcast, of course. About 1,000 hours of podcast later, I became the madrich of that program that I'd started in. And my little brother David, he started listening to the podcast as well. And he's now in Aisha Torah also. You've been a big influence on us, basically. And so it's really cool for me to be here with you.
Well, after 1,000 hours, of listening to the podcast, now you're on the podcast.
It's really cool. I'm very excited.
We did get to meet face to face. Yeah, tell us that story.
So I had met some of your nephews, basically, or a good friend of mine from yeshiva. His name is Dovi. So he's brother-in-laws with your brother, and I met through him a couple of your nephews, and then I go to a wedding for Rabbi Rossman's daughter, who's the head of Aish, and I see one of your nephews. I'm like, hey, what are you doing here? He's like, what do you mean? It's my brother's wedding. I'm like, what? So I'm like, wait a minute, is Rabbi Yaakov here? He's like, yeah, sure. And he points to this guy who's got his back towards me. He taps him on the back, and then you turn around, you look at me, and the first time you ever seen me, and you go, Yoshi? And I guess you recognized me just from the WhatsApp picture. Because you had sent me a message, which I didn't mention that earlier, but you sent me a WhatsApp message because my brother learned next to your brother and told your brother that I listened to your podcast, who told you, who sent you my number. Anyway, it meant a really great deal to me, and it was very cool for me to meet you. After that, I ended up coming to your other nephew's wedding, and I juggled at the weddings, and it was really great.
Well, our lives now are intertwined. And thank you for sharing that. And thank you for joining the podcast. I'm very excited to hear your story. Okay, so let's jump in. Let's dive into Gaza. I think a lot of us in America, and really, I guess broadly around the world, we feel like our hearts are really in Israel. Our hearts are in Israel. We should really be there. We feel maybe a little bit guilty about not being there. But certainly it's dominating our thoughts, our minds, our prayers. And we're constantly thinking about what's happening, and we're reading all the news. And I have a thing now, I'm watching a lot of Israeli television on YouTube to get a sense of what's actually happening on the ground. We're there in hearts and in spirit, but we're still distant. And I thought it would be helpful for us to get a sense of what it's actually like on the ground, in the battles, in Gaza, from someone who spent a long time there. So tell us what it's like, and let's start from the beginning. Of course, October 7th, the horrific, brutal massacre that happened. For us, it was Simchas Torah. So it was on Saturday, of course, Shabbos. And then we had Sunday as well, was Yom Tov for those of us in the diaspora. But you were there. You're in Israel. I'm sure you're hearing about it already on Shabbos morning. I texted you on 10/11. I looked back 10/11. So that's 4 days later. And you told me, Ani badarom, I'm in the South. So you were already in the South. So tell us what happened, where you were when you heard about this and when you, kind of went to the South.
So I woke up on Shabbos, on Simchas Torah, and apparently there were sirens going off in the old city. And then I see my officer calling me. And I didn't answer because it was Shabbos and he's not religious. I figured he just heard there were sirens in the old city. And so he was calling to see that I'm okay. So I didn't answer. I go to yeshiva, and I thought it was kind of strange that there's sirens because there's never sirens over there pretty much. And I get to yeshiva, and people start like whispering, like, "Oh, I heard from a security guard that something happened. I heard this," and they start giving me these ridiculous numbers. Like kids like Yoshi, and they always come to me because they know that I'm the guy in yeshiva who was in the army, and so they always come to me with this kind of news. And he's like, "Yeah, I heard there were like 200 people killed," and I'm like, "What? No, there's no way." He's like, yeah, I heard there were 500 people killed. And I'm like, I literally thought they were totally making this up. It just sounded so unbelievable. And then I started hearing from several different people, all kinds of just crazy numbers that to me were literally impossible. Like, you're talking like 400 killed and 100 kidnapped. And I'm like, there's no, like, that's not something, that doesn't happen over here. There's no such thing as numbers like that. But after a few people were giving me these crazy numbers, I realized that even if it's a fraction of the numbers that they're telling me, we're at war already. If there are civilians captured, we're already at war. And I'm a combat soldier. With or without my uniform, I'm a combat soldier. That's who I am. I'm a yeshiva bacher and I'm a combat soldier. And I have responsibility. So I went over to Rav Noach Weinberg's son, actually, who was there, Rav Yehuda, who was at yeshiva at the time. And I told him about the situation. He told me, go get your phone. You need to go speak to your officer. So I grabbed my phone and I called my officer basically, and they said, like, everybody on the phone is talking very rushed, And he's like, just have your phone with you. We're going to call you guys soon. So I have this is on Shabbos. I have my cell phone. I have my Hatzalah radio. I've got my handgun. I got a spare magazine. All of this is like on my pants and my pockets. I woke up my brother, who's also a combat soldier. He was a commander in paratroopers. I told him, listen, I don't know exactly what's going down, but something really serious happened and we're probably at war. Like, get ready. And, basically they ended up calling us. So after Shabbos, we actually made it through the whole Shabbos, and I'll share with you an experience actually that, happened at yeshiva. There were people there from America. There was actually, there was a guy who was in from America. One of his sons was in the army. Another one of his sons was in a camp that I had worked at in the summer. And the son that was in the army got called up right away on Shabbos. And I was watching. I was kind of like the fly on the wall because this wasn't even my business. But I watched as this father hugged his son to go to war. And I'll never forget this. And I'll never forget. Like I was holding back tears. I felt my throat, just watching this. And the son is like nervous but excited. And, when you're in the army, we talk about war all the time. It's what we're training for. It's what we're meant to be doing, And for the father, it was a whole other experience also. The kid, he was saying goodbye to his son and not knowing when he'll see him again or where he's going to be, what kind of danger he's going to be in. And I was there on the side, like watching it. And after the son walked away, I saw the father try to find a little corner where he could just, speak to Hashem. It was like what he wanted, and it was hard to find because it's a story. Everybody's dancing. And I'll never forget his face, honestly. But I actually saw that same face a second time from my own father when he said goodbye to me. Because that basically right after Shabbos, my brother and I got our stuff together really quickly, hopped in the car. We drove to my parents' house, who live in the Shomron. We prepared all of our combat gear because we've got all kinds of stuff at home that we've saved up. And we're like dividing up the gear because we shared it all. So we're like, all right, you get the mask, I'll get the magazine, you get the handle, I'll get the flashlight. And, they basically told us, they had us waiting until about 1 o'clock in the morning, and they told us to be at a base down south by Beersheba by 7 a.m. And, I'm sorry, by 6 a.m. 6 a.m. they wanted us to be down south, which is like not even possible, basically. Like, if I had a car, I'd have had to leave at like 4:30 in the morning, and I didn't have a car. So, first thing in the morning, I got there as fast as I can, and it was quick. We get there, we sign for gear. We all say hi to each other. Like, my team is very close to each other. To be in my unit, we had to do 14 months of training together. Plus we had to pass like a hell week to get into the unit. And, we spent 2.5 years together. We did arrests together, and we risked our lives together. So we're very, very close, and we all see each other, and it's like we're happy to see each other, but we're very sad that it's under these circumstances.
And you've met a few times since your mandatory service. You've met in Miluim, right? In reserve duty as well.
Oh, yeah.
So like 1 month a year? Is that 1 month a year that you get together with them?
So we did 1 month in Gush Etzion, and we also do these 1-day trainings where we'll do shooting, urban warfare, Krav Maga, and like first aid basically, just to keep, because you have to really stay sharp a little bit. So we sign for our gear, we get our vests, and we get our guns and everything. And next thing you know, we're going out to a place called Yachini, which is like a yeshuv down south, one of the yeshuvim that was attacked.
And at the time, there's still terrorist infiltrators.
That's why they sent us. Our job was basically to find and deal with any terrorists who are wandering around down there. So we spent a whole week just out in the shetach, like no tent, no nothing. Like we stayed in our vest. We slept just on the floor, just like that, in our vests. And we were there for a whole week, and it was really crazy because in terms of the army had taken such a rough blow that it wasn't functioning properly. The Southern Command had basically fallen. In terms of food, we got what's called manakim, which is just like boxes with a bunch of like canned tuna and corn. And that was it. Besides for that though, we got people civilians driving down, giving us care packages. That was like, it was the most unbelievable thing. They bring us hot food and protein bars and socks.
And that happened right away.
Yeah.
Where the civilian population just filled in. Yeah.
Right away, everybody just kicked into gear, got together, and did anything and everything that they could, which is really crazy because right before the war, with the political situation regarding the judicial reform, there was terrible, terrible strife. I had never seen, I've been in Israel 11 years, I had never seen this kind of strife inside Israel. To me, it was very hurtful to me, like painful for me to see the Jews in such bad terms with each other. I grew up in a house that's very Zionistic, very proud to be Jewish. We come from Holocaust survivors, and to see Jews that were I don't know how to describe it even, but it was very painful. And if we look throughout history, by the way, and from your podcast, the Jewish History podcast, also from one of my teachers, Rabbi Ken Spiro, he shows this a lot. How when the Jews rebel against God, he's usually patient with us. He gives us a lot of time. But when we fight amongst each other, he is not patient for that. And he sends in an external enemy to remind us that we are actually a family and we have to stick together. A good analogy would be if a child rebels against the parent, it's painful. But for a parent to see the children fighting amongst each other, that's when their heart is really torn in half. And so I'm not surprised that the scope of it, the magnitude, I'm totally shocked. But the fact that we were attacked, I wasn't surprised because I had said to people even before then, I'm like, we got to get our stuff together because otherwise we're going to have to the hard way. And unfortunately, that's what we're seeing. But hopefully, please God, we will come out of it stronger and more united. And this is something that I'm definitely experiencing, at least in the Army. In my team alone, we've got at least 4 different languages. We've got religious, not religious. We've got Olim Chadashim. We've got whatever it is you can think of, we've got it. And we all love each other. We all get along. One of my best friends in my team, actually, he grew up also in the south, in Otef Aza. His yeshuv is mefune. They can't even be there. They've been evacuated.
Which one's that?
When he leaves, Kibbutz Gevim.
Okay.
He actually shared with us today. He says, I don't know where I'm going after we leave. He's like, he doesn't have a home to go to. So anyway, he actually said to me,
was he there on October 7th?
What's that?
Was he there?
He was up north.
He was up north
in university. His kibbutz actually was not attacked, thankfully. There was basically a shootout at the entrance of the yeshuv, and then the terrorists drove to an easier target, and they were all okay. Although I'm sure there's damage from the rockets and the mortar bombs. But he actually said something very, very powerful to me. Especially, this was actually a few months before, but the judicial reform was a big mess. And he said to me, he's like, because he comes from a very, very secular background, and he's like, it's weird because I really thought that I don't like religious people, but I love you guys. Him and me and a few of the other religious guys on the team are very, very close. And he's like, it's really just the media that's pumping a lot of like poison and strife into the population, and it's just not true. And so when I'm here with everybody, we're brothers. And the craziest thing actually is like a few guys in my pluga, they were talking about how they were mafginim about the reform. They were like protesting. Yeah, which is very funny because I come from a much more conservative house, and we're not really fans of the left protesters. It's just not our view. And here they are, like that they were very big into it, and we just don't care. We're going to risk our lives together, and we'll share each other's food no matter how much it is, you know what I mean? And we're literally brothers who don't agree about politics and stuff, and we just don't care.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
So
wow.
I'm definitely...
So you spent a month, you spent a week with your teammates, with your brothers in arms, despite having very different backgrounds. You spent a week and you're scouring the South, and you're looking for any infiltrators. Is there anything about that experience you want to share with us before we get to the waiting period?
Right. So first of all, just booms all the time. All the time, booms. And most of them were from our side bombing them, but plenty of them were them bombing us. A lot of times we were able to see in the night sky the Iron Dome just shooting down the rockets. Like I was just used to it. Like we would just sit there and watch it. And it's interesting because like as a civilian, you hear a siren, you run for a shelter. Well, we didn't have a shelter, so you just there's nothing to do. And my personal experience, if I hadn't spent the time that I did in Aish, if I haven't done the work that I've done before this, in regards to Emunah and what I believe to be true in reality, I don't know how other people would cope with this. I've witnessed a million miracles since this whole thing has started, but to me, it just makes sense. I already know that God runs the world. Nevertheless, I've been in situations where it could have gone very, very differently and didn't, and there's just booms all the time, and hakbatzot, they'll say, okay, we have intelligence that there's a group of terrorists in this place, and we'll go running out looking for them. And then we'll come back, and we're always guarding. You don't sleep very much. There was one night when we were out there, and it rained. We have no tent, we have no jacket, we have nothing, and we're just so tired. I'm just like so tired. I'm in my vest. You sleep the best when you're in gear, by the way. When you have your vest and your backpack, that's when you get the best sleep because you're just like automatically tired. You put on the uniform, and the tiredness from the army just comes right back. But I was sleeping, and it starts to rain on me. And I'm like, oh, please, Hashem, make it stop. And he did, but not quite yet. And so we just got rained on, and that's like, okay, that's what we'll do. As combat soldiers, we believe in what we're doing, and rain is not going to stop us. So if I have to sleep out in the rain, that's what I'm going to do because this is what I believe in.
Wow, amazing.
From Yachini, we were there for a week. They took us to an urban training facility called Mala. I'm sorry, it was right next to Mala. It was Tzelim right next to Mala. Mala is the biggest urban warfare training facility, I think, in the world. I think. Ask Rabbi Google.
And that is where? That's also in the South?
In the South, yeah. I've been in the South the whole time. So we did training. Basically, it was like we did training because the assumption is they're sending us in. So we prepared, we did our training.
And it's there to mimic the environment of Gaza, right?
Yeah.
That's the design. Mm-hmm. So, tightly condensed buildings and, all these angles, and there could be snipers anywhere, and they're trying to really mimic that.
Exactly. So we did training over there. That was Shabbos. Like, there was no Shabbos. We trained the entire Shabbos all day. And then more at night. And
you're there for only one day? Because I assume there's waves and waves of soldiers that have to go through there, right?
Right. That training place we were at for one day. It was either one day or a day and a half. I don't remember. Because we did several other trainings in different places after that. In the end, they didn't bring us into Gaza yet. They sent us to a a base on the northern Gaza border. And we were there.
Is that
we ended up being there for 3
Zikim?
weeks.
Is that Zikim?
What's that?
Is that Zikim?
Yeah, right by Zikim, exactly. Yeah,
that's where they bring the new trainees or the new soldiers, right? That's one of the first places that soldiers go.
They're very close. There's a base that's right across from my base. That's where a lot of the new soldiers go, depending on their unit. And the base that I was at, there were 2 terrorists outside that had been killed, and they just left them there for a while till they were able to come and check the bodies and make sure that they didn't have explosives on them and clear them away.
So when you were there were just 2 corpses of terrorists just lying there?
Yeah, outside of the entrance to the base.
You saying they didn't clear away the bodies because they were worried that they might be booby trapped?
They just didn't have time to do it yet. They were so overwhelmed, and they have to clear them, make sure that they didn't have any bombs on them or anything. And it took time. Like we got hit really hard. It took time till we were able to deal with it, with all the injured, and and we lost soldiers in that base that were attacked. The terrorists that came in on those flying the
paragliders.
I don't know what they're called.
Paragliders.
Yeah. So 2 of them landed actually in the base. Although I don't think those were able to kill anybody. I'm pretty sure they killed those terrorists really quickly. But they got attacked also from the ground. This same base actually was attacked during Tzuk Eitan. Terrorists came up from a tunnel right by the entrance to the base. And so this is where we were, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. And what's really difficult in terms of the tunnels, it could be anywhere at any time they could pop up. And we had an incident actually where we're in the base, and I had just finished guarding. I was on a 3-hour guarding shift, and then all of a sudden the speaker goes off. Chadirat mechablim lemotzav. Chadirat mechablim lemotzav.
Which means an infiltration of terrorists into the base.
In the base. And we're like what? This is our home at the time. We live here. So we're all really quick in gear. I had barely even taken off my vest. I took off my vest a few minutes earlier. I throw my vest back on. We got our guns loaded. I have my handgun also on my leg. And we're literally in 360, covering ourselves inside the base.
How can a terrorist infiltrate the base? There's no wall?
So there's fences, but it's,
it's porous.
They can still do it, I guess. Yeah. Or if they dig a tunnel and pop up in the inside. This is when the Hamas terrorists came in from the sea and by Zikim. In the end, it turned out that there wasn't terrorists in the base, but that siren went off twice, 2 different times. And my team, basically, we were responsible for the security of this base. So we ended up having to search the whole base to make sure that it was clear. And the biggest danger is what we call dutz, which is friendly fire. That's one of the most dangerous things when it comes to war. And especially in this scenario, because everybody is locked and loaded. Everybody in the base was behind some kind of cover with their gun pointing out, ready to shoot anybody. And as we're walking by, we're like, Tal, don't shoot us. Please don't shoot us. And, it's nerve-wracking a little bit because you're inside your base. That's not where they're supposed to be. So anyway, that was a bit intense. When we had first gotten to that base, actually, we would hear the red alert. And so at first we would run to the shelter, but then it happens so often that
just for clarification, the red alert is when there is a projectile, a rocket coming from Gaza. So it's a blaring siren.
So we have actually 2 different alerts on the base. We have purple rain and red alert. Purple rain is when there's a rocket or a mortar that's flying over the base that might get shot down over the base, and then it could fall on us. And red alert means it's going to land on the base or really close to us, basically.
You think because Hamas was deliberately targeting that base?
They were targeting every base, honestly, anything they can. So we had these alarms just all the time. But you can't stay in, even though you're in a high stress situation, you can't stay in stress for that long, so you kind of get used to it. It's weird, but you kind of get used to your life being in danger all the time. And you kind of have to do that switch. So my guys and I were just talking about this the other day, how we've been trained, that was part of our training, to do that switch from 0 to 100 in a split second. to be very calm to then very not calm, and whatever you got to do, that's what you're going to do. But what I had to learn here was to do the switch from 100 back to 0 very quickly. That was something that we weren't used to. Like, let's say you had an arrest or you had whatever, an attack, whatever it was that you had to deal with. So you respond very quickly, but then it takes time to calm down after that. And over here, it's 0 to 100, 100 back to 0.
Wow.
And, like that all the time, which is probably not healthy, but like.
War seldom is.
Yeah. We'll be like chilling with coffee and then some kind of an event, red alert, whatever it is, we go running, then it's over, we go back. All right, guys, another round of coffee. Anyway, where were we? Back to the card game, whatever it was, And even inside Gaza, it was like this, by the way, because you just can't be on your toes for that long. So you have like you're definitely more alert than you would be, in civilian life or outside of Gaza. But when you're super that doesn't last. So you have to be very careful to find that balance of being aware and sharp enough without tiring yourself out.
Yeah, without getting worn out. Yeah, because you can't be at 100 miles an hour for months and months on end. Wow. So you spent you said 3 weeks in that base.
So yeah, we were there for 3 weeks, and during that time we did all kinds of missions.
Missions in the base or the border, yeah. On the border,
yeah. We actually my unit actually does explosives, and so they did find some kind of weapons on the terrorists.
Explosives.
And, I got to blow it up.
You mean explosives? You diffuse them. You don't create them, right?
No, I set them. I blow them up.
Yeah, sap them.
I don't diffuse them. I make them go boom. So the sappers came. The sappers actually put the they were the ones who like set the explosives for the for that. They were the ones who got the weapons from the terrorist body, and then I blew them up, which was pretty cool.
And what do you do? How does that work? You send like a robot?
No. So they, for them to clear the bodies, that was like, that's their specialty.
To clear the bodies without triggering, right? That's
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we place a charge on the weapon or the explosive, whatever it is they have. Then we go to a safe distance, and then we count down, and then we make it go boom.
You remotely trigger it. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's got like a wire. There's different mechanisms to initiate the explosion. And if I'm like all ADD, you just let me know.
No, I love it. I love it. I'm just thinking about these weapons charges going off. I guess you say it goes boom. It sounds like maybe if war isn't fun, it's not glamorous. Maybe there are little moments of dazzle.
There are fun moments. There definitely are. We had one mission actually about 2 weeks ago where we had placed like 110 anti-tank mines in a building to blow it up. And
but these are anti-tank mines that you collected from.
The army has them. The army has them, and the army supplied us with them. It wasn't like we didn't dig them out of the ground. It's very cool the difference in the sound of speed and the sound of the speed of sound and the speed of light. With bullets or with rockets shot down, you can see this very clearly. You'll see it get shot down, and it's a good couple seconds till you hear the boom. So 110 or so mines. We took a nice distance, and it was basically nighttime, and they count down. They press the trigger. And all of a sudden, and it was completely silent, all of a sudden, this huge building just turned into this black cloud with a bunch of glowing orange embers, like in a bonfire, but all over it. And it was amazing. It was just like, boom, immediate. And then 2 seconds later, boom, and the ground shook and the dogs got jumped. There were a bunch of Gazan dogs that we adopted basically.
These are, you said Gazan dogs?
Yeah. Dogs from there that we actually adopted them. People actually adopted them. They were with us for a month there.
And they cleave to you because either their owners are dead or because you give them food or whatever?
I'm not even sure. We were surprised. We thought that they would be more aggressive, but I mean, we're nice to the dogs, and they would guard with us, which was really nice for us because we'd be guarding and it's very dark. And even though I have like my night scope, I don't see everything all the time. And I'd be guarding with my friend. The dog would just be sitting by our feet, and the dog would stick its ears up and then start barking. And then my friend and I would both check in our scopes to see what it's barking at. It was usually another dog, but it was real nice to have that set of ears with us. There was a cat that would just come and hop on your lap the whole guarding, and my friend actually adopted it.
That's nice.
And
so you spend 3 weeks on the base, and you're going to all these missions on the north side of Gaza. So your Gaza Strip to the north.
At that time, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
And then you made the little turnaround to actually go in. Tell us about what it was like to enter Gaza.
So, in war, there's ivadaut. The only thing that's certain is that nothing is certain. Yeah. The only thing certain is that nothing is certain. Everything changes so quickly. And so basically they say that we're being switched. A unit came, switched us out. We then went to a different base. It's actually the base where we all did our training. And we did more training over there, preparing, because it seems that we were getting ready to go in. So we had about 3 days of training. My little brother David actually drove out to me and visited me while I was on that base. And we hung out for a few hours because that was the last time we were going to see each other for an unknown amount of time. And it was pretty clear that I was going to go into Gaza. So we got to utilize that time together, and it was really nice. While we were down there, people drive. There's a kid, actually, his name is Menashe, and I became friends with him. He and other guys spent the last month and a half or so driving all over the country, bringing donations to soldiers. He got me bulletproof plates because we were missing bulletproof plates and vests and thermals and food and batteries and just anything you could think of. He was there. I called him up and I'm like, listen, I need like 50 tents. He's like, give me an hour.
Wow.
And they were just hustling nonstop. It was amazing. It was really amazing.
Because here in America, we got all sorts of appeals for all these things that the soldiers need. And, I guess the army doesn't have enough or doesn't supply everything that you actually need. They have maybe, I guess, a more bare minimum. Is that what it is?
Well, unfortunately, the stuff that you guys sent was very much needed and is very much appreciated. So whoever's listening, I wanted to personally thank you for everything, for all of your support, because it made a very big difference for us. Not just knowing that other people care who aren't here, because that's the message that you're sending also. It's not just the food or the tent or the gear. It's sending your love. It's sending your support, and it's reinforcing the fact that we are Am Echad Belev Echad. And that really means a great deal because it just kind of reminds us of what we're fighting for. And when you're out there and you're tired and your life's in danger and the conditions aren't always great and, it's hard, these reminders give us koach. So every time we got a care package, every time a civilian came, it lifted our spirits. It gave us new koach. There's actually one time, I'm just going to go a bit sidetracked, but there was one time when we were in Yachini out there in the Shetah. We were pretty much living inside of like a bush for a week. And the Nanas guys drove by with their van with the music blasting. And they had no idea where we were. They knew that we were there somewhere. So they just drove down the road with the music playing so that we'd hear it. And we did. They actually found us and they came and gave us a bunch of Nanach kippas and danced with us and stuff.
But everyone ultimately got everything that they needed. Is that right? Before you went in?
Before we went in, yeah. Although it was a bit of a roller coaster. I don't want to like trash talk the army or anything. Cause everybody, it was a big blow, from the October 7th. But, in the beginning, we were sorely lacking gear. That's the truth. Basically, all the mandatory conscripts, they have very good gear. The army really supplies for them, but they didn't quite have enough for all the miluimnikim, for the reserve soldiers. It's not that they didn't have, it's what they had wasn't very good. It was old gear. It was gear that we would have used many years ago. And if it was many years ago, we wouldn't have complained because that's just what it is. But nowadays, when there's much, much better gear, it's important to have it. Combat it's very much like Gemara, actually. Every detail counts. Every detail matters. We train and train and train because we are trying to maximize the chances of succeeding in our mission and minimize the chances of us failing or, God forbid, getting injured or killed. And everything matters from when you're shooting your gun. Is your elbow out or is your elbow in? Make yourself a smaller target, every tiny detail. So the better the gear, the better you'll be able to fight. And so once we got better vests and better helmets, it changed the game for us. It really changed the game for us. And in the end of the day, the gear, this is really our lives. If a soldier is not able to see well because his helmet's not sitting on his face, well, he may not be the one to shoot first. And that might be the difference between life and death, you know? So all the gear and all the money and everything that people contributed literally saved lives.
Amazing. And it really was a mobilization across the board. Yeah. You know, in every community, you know, on the podcast we spoke about it a few times, but so many friends of mine, so many different organizations that we are familiar with, you know, it was unbelievable, the outpouring of support. So you have all your gear. We're ready to go. Tell us about what it's like to enter Gaza.
Okay, so entering Gaza, there's something called the Shetach Kinus, which is like the gathering.
The staging, maybe the staging,
across the border.
The staging ground. Maybe it's called staging ground.
I don't know what it is in English, but that's where we all meet up right before we go in. And so we go there on Friday night, and they're like, okay, we're going in, and like Shabbos morning, early in the morning. And then Shabbos morning comes, like, not yet, soon. And then, they go, okay, guys, this is it. This is time. We have all these speeches. The Magad gave a speech. The Mempei gave a speech. We sang Hatikva. Everybody's ready to go. We get our vests on. We get our backpacks on. Like, we got these huge, backpacks with all our gear and it's a lot of weight. We're standing in formation, and we start walking. We're like, that's it. We're going in. And as you walk, there's these officers that ask for your name and your military ID number, and they write you down. They took pictures of us, basically, and we start walking. And we start walking a few feet, then we stop. And then we walk a few feet, then we stop. Now, we don't all have walkie-talkies, so we don't really know what's going on. We're just following the guy in front of us, essentially. And we walk, we stop, and wait. And this happens a few more times and then we end up waiting for quite a while, like an hour. And then like, all right, guys, it's canceled. We're not going in now. we go, okay. We walk back 200 meters, however far we walked. And some of the other guys, we were actually in the back. Some of the guys had walked already like to the border and then came back.
So this is an enormous column of infantrymen just all walking from the base, which is, I don't know, a few miles away from the border, maybe?
It was I think it was about a kilometer, maybe.
About a kilometer, so it's very close to...
Maybe a bit less, even.
Wow, so you're right on the border, and now, okay, turn around, let's go walk back home.
We walk back, and they're like, yep, I don't know what's going on, there's some kind of misunderstanding, and we're like, okay, so we're just waiting. Now, I didn't get excited because I knew about this, I knew that this happens. A friend of mine in my team, his brother was in Tzuk Eitan, and he said that they were like, they're going in, they're not going in, they're going in, they're not going in.
Well, is it possible that this is deception, where you want to confuse the enemy, that the enemy doesn't know where you're coming in from? I imagine there's something to that.
What it was. I think it's
just poor communication, a little dysfunction.
Yeah, and war is just so crazy. There's so much going on at one time. In the end, we ended up sleeping at the Shetach Kinus that night, Shabbos night, and we basically got rained on. Just poured on us. And we actually had sleeping bags. They got us sleeping bags very late. Like, it was late by the time they got them to us. And it just was raining on us in our sleeping bag, and there's nothing you could do. Like, I'm so tired. I'm not getting out of the sleeping bag. And I tried to find, like, slightly dry parts of the bag to sleep in. But anyway, the next day we go back to our base, and they say, okay, guys, the latest is that Tuesday we're supposed to go in. Tuesday. This is on Sunday morning. So I speak to my Rabbi Etlinger, who I'm very close with, who really, him and his kids and the Rebbitzin were in touch with me probably every day that they could. They sent care packages to us. They davened for us. The kids made drawings for us. Like, I can't express enough appreciation towards them. And I just knew that every second of the day they're davening for us. Anyway, so I tell him and my brother, and my dad, I'm like, listen, we're going in on Tuesday. That's what they say. And they're like, okay. And then a few hours later, they're like, okay, surprise, we're going in tonight. And so, bam, Sunday night, we go back to Shetach Kinus, right where we were. We got all our gear. And this time, it took a lot less time. We put our backpacks on, crossed the border, and
again, the border wall is still open from the infiltration?
Yeah.
Or they made a new opening?
I don't know. It's a big opening. It could be they opened it more since then. Now, when it comes to combat soldiers, and especially when we're walking or when we're doing anything really, it's very quiet. There's no talking, basically. So you cross, like, we're joking around with each other, and the minute we get to the fence and cross, silence. And something that's very cool is, like, you could have combat soldiers, and we're essentially still kids, you know. You could be 18, you could be 25, and a lot of my friends are big jokesters, and we're a bunch of guys. We have a good time. And then when we're in the field, silence. Everybody's aiming. Everybody's looking for where a threat can be. Everybody knows what he's supposed to do. And it's very organic, our team. And it feels very good to be a part of this. We cross the border. We start walking. We got our bags on our backs, our bulletproof vest, all our magazines. We've got grenades, a bullet in the chamber, and everybody's just looking, where's the terrorist going to pop out from? And we walked. It was a few kilometers in, not too far. And there's just booms all the time, but we're pretty much used to that already. At this point, it's been already a month, and there's just booms all the time and gunshots in the distance. But, like, this is already second nature to us after the last month, because the last 3 weeks we were on the border. And before that, we were by Yachini. We were not far. Gunshots everywhere. And we walk into Gaza, and the ground is kind of like sandy. It's kind of like sand/dirt, and piles of rubble and garbage everywhere. Just like garbage at first. We walk past a bunch of garbage. There's something called a mizbala, where the Arabs, what they do is they don't use like a dump, I guess, like we do. They burn their garbage in this big thing called a mizbala. It's like a big mound of dirt, and that's where they burn the garbage. And we get to our mignan, which is, I don't know how I say that exactly, but it's where we are camped out, like encampment, I guess. And we switched the soldiers that were there. The soldiers that were there just looked exhausted. They were covered in pudra. Pudra is basically dirt or sand that's been very finely ground up by tanks and other armored vehicles. And it's like very powdery dirt, and it just gets everywhere. And you could actually have it, like, you could step in it, not realizing you could sink all the way down, like, to your knee, because it's like powder. It happened to be, there was one of my friends from my yeshuv I see there, and it's like really nice. Like, hey, you give him a big hug, and it's like, we're friends from home, and we're both soldiers here inside Gaza. A guy walks over to me. I look up, and I see it's my Rosh Tzevet of my team in Hatzalah for the old city. He was there, and I had switched him. And
how long had they been there for?
They had been there for 2 weeks, and we had just switched them. Everything, it's so cool how it felt so foreign, and then it became home quite quickly. We moved to several different encampments and built new ones and improved upon them. Every time we go there, we make the guarding stations better and fill sacks of sand. But and we did a bunch of missions. We would go take over houses and stuff. And we got there was a tunnel, a pier. A pier is like the entrance to a tunnel, not far from us. And since we're the guys who do the explosives, some guys from my team went over there and they blew it up. Basically, it was a bunch of olive fields where we were. A lot of olive fields and houses, and it does not look like that now. One of my friends found a picture from Google Images and sent it to me of the neighborhood we were in, and I couldn't even believe it. It's just, war is just so destructive. Several times I said to my friends as we're sitting there looking out, I'm like, I can't believe it. I just can't comprehend how these people, all they cared about was to kill Jews, even though it meant their own destruction. It's incomprehensible to me. Like, houses that are rubble everywhere. Like, I could tell that it was a house, but now it's just a pile of steel and concrete. And I saw these just mounds of rubble. I saw a sideways car inside upside down trees, and it was just total destruction. And it's so crazy because it doesn't have to be this way. But, well, yeah, a bunch of destroyed houses. And, we took over several houses and we had to clear a bunch of houses. One of them that we were in, it was wild because I could see kids' toys, children's clothing all over the place. I mean, the houses are, first of all, there's no, like, all the glass is broken. Everything's broken. And bullet holes everywhere. Bullet holes and, bullet shells all over the place. And the floor, like, you couldn't even see the floor. There was just stuff all over the floor. And, this was kind of wild, but like my friends and I were in this house for a while and we found a photo album in the house and we sat there and went through this photo album. And it was so weird because in this house, I was like, it looked like a very loving house with a bunch of kids in it. Like there was like a big dollhouse in the corner and it was colorful. And I was like praying that we would find weapons or something that ties them to Hamas so that I wouldn't feel as bad about being in this house. So in the photo album, we had a family picture with the Hamas flag, and they had a picture of Arafat hanging. So I'm like, okay, we're good.
All the guilt melted away.
Yeah. A different house, which we actually stayed in for a while, was a Hamas terrorist house. We took over the house. We found explosives inside the house underneath the stairs. It's actually in the news. You might even see me. I spoke to some of the news reporters, but there were claymores and bombs inside the house. We found grenades inside the bedroom. Like there was like one of the kids' rooms, the parents' room with a crib in the room, and grenades in the clothing drawer right near the crib. And
was it there? Do you think it was there to like booby trap the Israelis?
No, it was just
a good place to say.
Even. They were his grenades. They were the terrorist grenades who had to run away, I guess. We found part of an AK-47 there, and it's like, and in one of the rooms, I found a bunch of books, that he was apparently studying law. And it's just like, this guy's a lawyer and a Hamas terrorist. What in the world?
Wow.
Like, there was a Tu'udat Shahid, which is basically, it means that somebody in his family had been a martyr, and they get a special, like a Tu'udah.
A certificate?
Help me out. Yeah. They get it's like a special plaque.
And they get a stipend, right? They get a stipend.
Yeah. And I've seen this actually in many houses that I did arrests in the Shomron and in the Gush. I've seen this hanging in houses. It'll be a picture of usually about a teenager or a guy in his 20s, and he's got like a band around his forehead with Arabic writing on it, and usually an M16, and he's standing by like a Hamas flag, and he was like a martyr, and they celebrate this, which is
crazy,
totally wild.
Wow.
So inside Gaza, back to the story a little bit, where we spent some time in the houses, where we would take over a house and live there for a little while.
Are you seeing, the population? Like, I know most of the population went south, but you're at the southern point. So are you seeing population? Are any of the houses occupied? Are you seeing the flow of the civilians, allegedly at least, going south on the Al Saladin Road? Is that right? Traveling south for a few hours a day. So what is your interactions with the local populace?
So the local population are not allowed to be there. It's an active war zone. Like if they're there, they will be killed either on purpose or by accident. It is very dangerous. They all have to evacuate. So there's nobody there. Hopefully nobody there. If anybody's there, they're a terrorist and we're going to shoot them. And, there's a road that, goes from north to south. That's the humanitarian road, which was right by us. And I was able to see it with my binoculars. And cars all the time driving up and down, and people trying to hitchhike. Groups of people trying to hitchhike to get further south.
Cars are going up north and south?
Probably up north to pick people up and bring them back south is my guess.
Yeah, but at that point, had Israel conquered or captured that road? So did you have like a chokehold on that quite yet or not yet?
Yeah. We controlled the road. But I would see the civilians, and I'm just imagining that these people are hearing bullets and tanks and all day. And we had some incidents where civilians actually came around where we were, and that was like Hamas had sent people to do it. especially during the ceasefire. During the ceasefire, Hamas told people to go back north because that would really complicate things for us. So we had to really push them back. I'm trying to think like in chronological order, but it's just everything is so.
It's all mixed together. Tell me, are the soldiers? Are they scared? Is there trauma? Do you have people that are just cowering in fear, or everyone, at least the ones that you encountered, are just they're okay? You know, they're okay. They're tough. They're men. They're fighters.
It's important to understand that there are soldiers that are much deeper that are in the more urban areas, and that's much more close quarters and much more dangerous. And where I was is more of an open area. It's more like open field with a bunch of houses, but it's not like the close quarters areas. And the guys that are deep in there, much harder to hear from them, and they're the mandatory conscripts really that are in the most dangerous areas. We weren't, in constant fear. We're very, first of all, you kind of make yourself comfortable where you are. You kind of get used to the fact that you're in Gaza and that there's gunshots and bombs all the time. like when there was a particularly loud or close boom, so then we'd be like, yo, and then we just go back to chilling kind of, But, there were times, like there was one time, I don't know how to accurately describe this sound, but the sound that a bullet makes as it whizzes past your head is extremely disturbing, to be honest. It's a nice sounding sound if you listen to it with headphones. But I was. It's
like a mosquito bothering you at night, like a whizzing sound.
It's kind of like a shoo, shoo, shoo. All of a sudden, I hear like automatic gunshots. And like when they're in the distance, it's more of a pop, pop, pop. But when they're near you, it makes that whistling sound. And I hear it right over my head. And I duck down and I literally said out loud, I'm like, dude, stop. I don't know who the dude is that I was talking to, but it was very unpleasant.
And you're by yourself? You're by yourself? You're on the open field?
There were other people near me and they all ducked down trying to figure out what happened. What happened was, the team next to us had been shot at with an RPG, and then the terrorists opened fire on them with an AK-47. And bullets started flying all over our heads, either from our own people or from the terrorists. I don't know who it was, because there was a whole firefight, and this is like 100 meters away from us, maybe. And what's crazy is like, they shot the RPG at them. It could have been at us. We were right next to them, and there were mortars. I'm telling you, I witnessed constant miracles, mortars that fell just too close for comfort in between, like really right next to us, which actually very recently, this was a few days ago where it really shook me a little bit, where I was guarding with a friend of mine. And we were actually talking about that time when the bullets had flown over our head. And then all of a sudden we hear, boom, and a mortar bomb landed like 50 meters in front of me, maybe 50 meters in front of me. And just a huge boom and a big pillar of smoke rose up. And then right after another, thump, where another one landed but didn't explode. And then another one landed and exploded. And we're like, dude, let's get out of here. And we moved down from where we were guarding because we just felt too exposed, but there was nowhere to go. It was like a red alert, but there is no red alert. There's no sirens and there's no bomb shelters. So there are bombs blowing up right in front of my face, and there's nowhere for me to go. And there's this fear inside of you. It's like a primal fear, primitive fear, and I had to really tap into my own emunah that I had worked on previously, and I had to remind myself that there's an infinite conscious source to my existence who determines when I live and die. The fact that I exist every second is because he is mechadesh bechol yom tamid maaseh bereshit. He is every day renewing creation. And so I exist now because he's making me exist. And that gives me a sense of comfort because you kind of, relinquish control, essentially, the illusion of control. We are not in control. If there's anything that this war is teaching us, is that as strong as the IDF is, one of the best armies in the whole world, they managed to do the most horrific attack that we've seen since the Holocaust. 2 years ago, a tiny little virus shut down the world for 2 years. Like, we are not in control. We have to remember that. And humility is key. You know, something that I've realized is that when I'm humbled, when somebody is humble, because they realize that there's a real king that we are subservient to, so to speak, that we are here because of Hashem's generosity. Generosity isn't even the word, but God's love is the source of my existence. Now, that being said, that means that I'm not the source of my own existence. So on one hand, it's very humbling, but on the other hand, against another human being, I know that he's also here because of God's love. So it puts me very humble compared to God, so to speak. And it also gives you a certain confidence because I'm here because the master creator and sustainer of the universe wants me to be. Wow. I matter and I belong, you know?
And do you get a sense that the soldiers that don't have that same strong Emunah faith background, they maybe struggle a little bit more with kind of putting themselves in the right context of how to process all of this? Or do you feel maybe the people in the foxhole that they have somewhat of a metamorphosis of a renaissance in faith?
I've definitely seen a spike in religiousnous amongst the secular. I think a lot of them rely on cigarettes and distractions. I wonder what other people hold on to. What it is that what it seems that most of them have is, this is my home. This is my family that I'm protecting. And they're going to do that. And they're going to risk their lives for what they believe in, just like me. I have a bit of an advantage knowing that we're being watched over. You know, my biggest fear really wasn't, God forbid, that I would die. You know, I have every intention of coming home, but my biggest fear is the people that I leave behind. You know, and I, whenever I would speak to my mom on the phone, I would remind her, I'd be like, but we know that God determines, and we know that God is good based on honestly simple logic. If God is infinite and lacking nothing, then our own existence is for us, is a gift, you know?
And you were able to speak to mom from Gaza? I thought there was there's no phones there.
This is before Gaza that I would have these conversations with her. But it did happen that 3 weeks in, when I was in Gaza, I found somebody with a cell phone who probably wasn't supposed to have it. And this was like 7 minutes till Shabbos. And I realized this person, not from my unit, had a cell phone. I asked them for their phone. I found a little spot with service. I called my dad, he didn't answer. I called my mom, and she didn't answer. I called her again, and then finally she answered. And I'm like, hey, it's me. I only have like 20 seconds. Have a great Shabbos. And, I called my mom. She didn't answer. My dad did answer. And then my mom was right there. You put it on speakerphone. And, just like the sound of their voice was like magic. It was crazy, you know, like their excitement and surprise. They hadn't heard my voice in weeks, and they knew that I was on the inside. And, my dad got to give me a bracha 5 minutes to Shabbos. And, I'm just going to ADD a little bit, jumping back to what I had mentioned about the father saying goodbye to his son. So this happened on Sunday. My dad drove me to a gas station where guys from my unit picked me up to bring me the rest of the way. So he drove me there, and as we said goodbye, he gave me a bracha, and we had that goodbye that other father had, where I saw it from a different perspective because it was me, you know? So anyway, he got to give me a bracha over the phone. I got to speak to them, and they got to hear that I'm okay. And, I got to be energetic and be like, yeah, it's all good. We're chilling over here, you know? And, I think because a lot of people imagine war in Gaza, boom, 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 grenade, you know? People are imagining Hamburger Hill kind of movie. And, it's not entirely like that, depending on where you are. It's all the time. It's your life, you know. It's like crazy to think that 2 months ago I was trying to start college and stuff, and now I'm like making sure that my gun is clean and making sure that my guys are protected from this angle. You know, it's pretty wild. I forgot your question. What did you ask me again? I got all distracted.
We're talking about how the religious soldiers process what they're going through versus the non-religious, or the more, I would say, the more evolving non-religious soldiers.
Right.
Let me ask you a question. So you have a mortar that explodes 50 meters away from you. I heard, this is one of the things that I hear, just the kind of ideas that you pick up, that one of the major innovations of the military was the coordination between the ground troops and the Air Force. And that the ground troops are able to call in an airstrike. So are you able to do that? Like when there's a mortar that explodes, you're like, there must be someone, within a certain distance away that's shooting it. Let's get a drone. Let's get some sort of protection. Is that real, or is that
something that we do that a lot, actually. And it's not so simple, because where the mortar lands doesn't help me as much unless I see where it left from. But there was a time where we saw the rockets. I saw the rockets being shot into Israel. Like, we saw them get shot. We had these little radios. It was very much like Yom Kippur War or Vietnam War, where like everybody's got their mustaches because that was like a trend. And we're literally listening to this little radio with an antenna, trying to get it in the right angle to hear the station, And we would see the rockets get shot from Gaza into Israel. And then we would hear them on the radio say the red alert for those places. And we'd so it actually happened that we saw them get shot out of wherever they were shot from. And a friend of mine lifted up his compass and saw the azimuth.
The coordinates? Maybe the coordinates?
Yeah. He saw it was from 90 degrees or whatever it was. And somebody from a different unit also did that. And they triangulated where they were and blew them up from the sky.
Wow.
Which it was not pre-planned.
And how soon after? How soon afterwards? Like are there constantly jets flying over?
Oh yeah, it's constant stuff like that. But something like that's not all the time that they were able to triangulate it. But in terms of the airstrikes, those are happening all depending on the day. What's really cool is that I was actually in the middle of reading a book called All the Light We Cannot See. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, but it talks about triangulating using radios. And that was exactly what we did, just with the compass.
Wow. Well, I will tell you that if you ever do get a cell phone into Gaza, I don't know if you're going in or not, and I guess you yourself don't know, right? You don't know if you're going back in or when you are. Is that right?
Right. As of right now, we're not supposed to, but it could change any minute. We're basically on call now. But I actually bought a kosher phone. A kosher phone, if I have service, I can bring it in there because there's no GPS, no internet.
Oh, okay. Well, I want you to listen to a podcast in Gaza. I want to be able to kind of say we have listeners in Gaza.
Nice. I have a memory card on there. I can download a podcast.
There you go. So tell me more about what it's like in Gaza. So you're in Gaza. You have these protected places, but Shabbos is probably no Shabbos, right? You have to do your mission. You have to do your duties on Shabbos. But do you have, time to put on tefillin, to daven a little bit? Do you have time for that?
Yeah. So I've been trying very hard. It's difficult. There were some days that I missed tefillin. I've made it almost every day, but there were some days that I missed. Most days you have time to daven. It depends on the day. Depends what you're doing. You know what I mean? Shabbos is difficult because on one hand you're in a constant situation of pikuach nefesh where your life is, so to speak, in danger, and so you have to break Shabbos. The difficulty for me is where's the line? I don't have my rabbis close by like I do at yeshiva where I could just ask them. So it's like, yeah, but is this necessary? Should I even worry about it? What Rav Ettlinger had told me that Rav Berkowitz said, so he actually called Rav Berkowitz and asked him. Rav Berkowitz said, just try to remember that it's Shabbos because it's sakanas nefashos all over the place. We actually had a minyan sometimes for Friday night for davening. We actually, one of the minyans, it was very cool where some of the secular guys joined in, and one of them, he was so excited. He was like, it was the best davening ever. And it was very cool because we make a minyan of what we've got. So you got Sephardi, Ashkenazi together. And we were switching off with the Ashkenazi tunes, the Sephardi tunes, the Ashkenazi songs, the Sephardi songs. And it was a really nice mix. That was my favorite davening perhaps ever because it was such a mix. And also this guy was so excited that everybody was willing to do whatever it was that he wanted because he was more excited about the davening than we were even. Like, we were excited, but he was really excited. And Aside for that, though, you're constantly doing malacha. You have to use the night vision goggles, and you have to use fire sometimes. And yeah, but you just got to remember that that the God who told me to keep Shabbos also told me to break Shabbos when I have to.
Yeah.
And that we're in Mesemet Mitzvah, where the Jewish people are in danger, and so we have to stand up and fight. And throughout history, this is what we do. We are a nation who fight for what we believe in. We fight for what's right, for the truth, for the objective truth. That's what we are meant to do in this world, is represent the truth.
Tell me about the ceasefire. So you mentioned the ceasefire briefly. What was it like? Where what were the rules, and what was it like, the tension on the ground when you have to kind of stop any fighting, really, right?
Yeah, the ceasefire for us was great. Oh, it was so quiet. It was nice. It was the quietest it had been in the previous month and a half, because from the 8th of October, we were hearing booms and bangs all day and all night. And then all of a sudden it was like quiet. It was funny because there was actually a drone flying above us, one of our own, drone flying above us that was making a lot of noise at night. And like, with the booms, I was able to sleep no problem. But this drone, I couldn't sleep. I had to put in my earplugs. And also the stars, by the way, because there's no electricity down there, you could see the most beautiful view of the stars, which helped a lot with like just sitting and contemplating, speak to God as you're laying out there in Gaza, looking at the stars. So the ceasefire was it was a bit of a break. On one hand, it's very mixed feelings. It was a break in terms of that it was quieter, and we weren't able to do a lot of missions that we maybe wanted to because we couldn't risk ruining the ceasefire. We're also like, a ceasefire is bad because it means that they're restocking and they're just preparing to fight better. But at the same time, they're releasing captives, and that's the thing that's most important to us. We would be crowding around the radio, just waiting for them to say that they actually released them, and we've got them. Every day they're supposed to release, we were all sitting around the radio listening, because this is the thing that we care about most. You see, when you're Jewish, and especially when you're here in Israel, you really are one family. There's not a single person who's not connected to somebody who's been killed, injured, or captured by at least one mutual person. Doesn't exist. I have 4 friends who have been killed that I know about. One of the guys in my unit, his wife's entire family were captured. And I'm like to him, when he told me this, I'm like, well, how are you doing? He's like, I'm okay, I'm here. I'm like, how's your wife? He's like, oh, she's a mess. I can't even imagine. I personally stayed away from any videos or pictures as much as I can. Anyway, I'm not on social media. And I really tried not to look at anything, because I have to function. We're going to do what we have to do. And, when I would think about the people that are captured, I don't know how to handle myself. I don't know what to do, And when we're out getting rained on, I'm thinking, yeah, but they're held prisoner by Hamas. I'll get rained on for 100 years if it means getting them back. There's nowhere we won't go to get them back. There's nothing we wouldn't do. It's a much, bigger, more complex situation. You got the political situation, the strategic situation, but boots on the ground. Every soldier is willing to do anything to get these people back. It's so personal. For me, I grew up in a house that lives and breathes like this. My mom, especially, has a very, very strong love and passion for the Jewish people. And in 2014, when the 3 boys were kidnapped, and we were davening until we got the news that they were actually killed. I'll never forget this. Basically, my brother and I were upstairs, and all of a sudden we hear from downstairs, my mom start shrieking. And him and I ran downstairs. We're ready to kill somebody. We're like, I don't know who he is or how big he is, but he's going down. And we run down there, and there's nobody there attacking her. She was just sitting in front of the computer, and she was hysterical, crying, beside herself. And I understood this could only be one thing. And I understood that the boys unfortunately were killed. And so I give her a hug, and I tried to comfort her, but she was like inconsolable for kids that she had never met. And for me, it was very difficult to see my mom like this. So I had to walk outside. I walked outside. Oh, my neighbor came running in. She came running in, crying hysterically, and then she started hugging my mom. And I'm like, okay, good, I can go now. And I walk outside the house. I walk into the street, and I hear from both sides of the street, from every window that I walk past, from every house that I walk past, I hear people crying out loud. And this shook me to my core. My neshama was crying. People were crying from the depths of their soul for people they had never met. And this is something unique and extremely special amongst the Jewish people. I tell people, remember that you are part of a family of 14 million, and unfortunately, in the worst times, we remember this. And I think that what we've really got to practice and strive towards, is to remember this in the good times,
That was amazing, Yoshi. Unbelievable. It's really, like you said, it's something to appreciate. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to have these terrible things and circumstances to awaken that. But it's really something special to realize that we're part of this nation, right? We're part of this people, this very, very large family. I want to end off maybe with kind of giving us your take of maybe the changes that you're seeing in the Israeli society. So we spoke about the idea of unity, that maybe the media or politics that tries to divide us, nonsense like this whole judicial reform and all that, and the right and the left, and most of it's nonsense. Of course, there's important things on the docket, but ultimately it's, we're a family. We sometimes forget that, and that's changing, or at least you're seeing change on that front. I noticed just from my own anecdotal observation that there's a change in how people are talking. Before Rosh Hashanah, there was this terrible statement by the prime minister, and he walked it back, thankfully. But he was telling the Jews that wanted to go to Uman, don't go to Uman, because Hashem doesn't always protect us. Remember that statement that he made? Hashem didn't always protect us. That's what he said. And then he walked it back. But now I'm hearing, every time I listen to any the press conferences they do, it's Bezrat Hashem, with the help of Hashem, Bezrat Hashem. I'm hearing that a lot. So my question is, are you seeing that on the ground? We're hearing that there's a huge demand for tefillin and tzitzis. So, you spoke about your friend who joined the davening Friday night, your secular friend. And in general, you mentioned a few times about how people are connecting with their religion more. But how do you see the changing society, perhaps the evolving society, during the war and after the war?
So the truth is, at least presently, I barely see society outside of the army. I've left a total of 2 times since the war started. I remember the first time, so I went home 2 weeks after the whole thing started, and then I didn't go home for 5 weeks later, which was only about a week ago. And it was really quite crazy when I got home and I see that there's barely any young men anywhere. And I see many, many women with their kids, and they all have the same face that it portrays to me, what I'm reading on this face is that they're worried all the time about their husband, their brother, their father, whoever it is who's in the army, but they're also trying to be strong for the kids and take care of everything and probably not burden the husband on whatever it is that they're going through. And I saw this on a lot of people as I was walking by, and there's a family, their name is Dudu and Revital, who, when I made Aliyah, they lived in the same house, actually. We rented the upstairs and they rented the downstairs, and we became very, very close. We're literally family. They had 2 kids when we moved in together, a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. We lived in the same house for about 7 years, and then they moved a little bit down the road. And we're extremely, extremely close. They had 2 kids while we were living in the same house. So their youngest, his name is Ido. He's about 5 years old now. And Dudu's an officer in the army. So I got home, and Dudu was in the army. I go over to their house, and Ido just jumped on me and gave me a hug, and he wouldn't let go. He's a kid with very high energy. This kid does not sit still ever, but he he wouldn't let go of me. He just stayed there on top of me. And I was speaking with Rebbe Tal for a while, and he just stayed right there on my lap. He wouldn't let go. And, I'm sure he missed me, but really he missed his father, and Dudu and I are best friends basically. So, in terms of society, I don't see it so much so far because I've been in the army. I haven't seen what it's like on the outside except for those brief breaks when I had left, and I felt something different in the air, I felt that there was much more unity. I felt great appreciation from the people as I walked around in my uniform or with my gun. My dad and I went to get food actually before I came back to bathe. We got a nice steak. It was great. And, as we're walking, we were in Renana. A guy sees me with my gun. He goes, "Hey, you come take a shawarma." He was just going to make me a shawarma because he saw the gun. And, people just would stop and say thank you, And aside for that, I don't know so much because I've been in it. I'm a bit nervous because tomorrow I'm supposed to go home until they call us back, which could be at any time. It could be in a day, it could be in a month. I have no idea. And I think it's going to be a bit weird that the war is going on and I'm not in it necessarily, but everybody has to do their part, whatever it is, wherever they are. So that's really, really important. I think a lot of people imagine that like you have to be James Bond, you have to be Rambo, but that's not true. First of all, those people don't really exist. And every single person has his part to play. If the chef doesn't make the food, the combat soldiers don't eat,
The army marches on its stomach, they say.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, I have gained so much weight from all the junk food that they've sent us. I've had tuna fish and cookies, in terms of the lasting effects, I really hope so. I really hope that the unity will last and grow. I have my doubts, because of human nature, it's much more comfortable to not get along, it seems, especially with people that are different from you in some ways. And, I think that what it would require is a Kabbalah, essentially. Rav Malach Biederman, he comes to Eshet Torah, at the end of Rosh Hashanah, and he speaks to us, and there's two things that he mentions. I've heard him speak twice so far, and he talks about, number one is Asher Simei Tshuva. He implores us to take advantage of the 10 days of repentance. He says that the impact of those days is so significant. You could do enormous work and influence your future year in that time much more than other times of the year. An analogy that he gives is, let's say a crane is lowering one of those big shipping containers, and while it's in the air, it weighs thousands of pounds, but while it's in the air hanging by the crane, you could actually move it with one finger even, by the way. You could push it and move the container. Once it lands on the ground, it's going to be very difficult to move. The 10 days of repentance are while the crane is holding it in the air for you to do work on yourself, to improve yourself. That's the time where you can get the most bang for your buck. So he really encourages us to do this. The second thing he does, he tells us to take on a Kabbalah, take something upon yourself that you can do every single day in 5 minutes or less.
Like a resolution.
A resolution, exactly. This is the thing that has changed my life because I listened to him. I took upon myself a Kabbalah. You see, as the 10 days of repentance are here, and Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, you're at the spiritual peak of the year. You've been working on yourself, working on your character traits, self-reflecting, and then Rosh Hashanah, you're really into it. 10 days of repentance, you're really trying to just keep the pedal to the metal, and it's hard. And then Yom Kippur is the peak. And then after Yom Kippur ends, it's kind of like that New Year's resolution. It could either just go right out the window or you can maintain it. But the way to maintain it is by this Kabbalah every single day. You take upon yourself this resolution that you could do in 5 minutes or less that will tap you back into the state of mind that you were at the spiritual peak. For me, I think about some of the Yom Kippur davening, and I miss my closeness with God during that time. It's kind of like a longing almost for another human being because I felt closest to God during this time. And I personally did a Tanis Dibur on Yom Kippur, which a
Tanis Dibur, which means that you're going to refrain from talking on Yom Kippur.
Right. So I did a Tanis Dibur, which meant that I don't talk except for to Hashem, basically. And for me, it was really important, because I was so focused on my relationship with Hashem, and it made Yom Kippur very, very meaningful. And then taking upon yourself this resolution, every time you do it, you want to be conscious of what you're doing every day of your life. Ideally, we strive for consciousness. Rav Dovber, he talks about how every time you walk past the mezuzah, you kiss the mezuzah, you don't do it mindlessly. Remember what's written in the mezuzah. What does it say? What are we living for? What are we doing with our lives? And every time I fulfill my Kabbalah that I took upon myself, I tap back into Yom Kippur. And it's been enormously impactful. Because you could, once the fast ends, so to speak, you could just jump back into old habits. But if you want to maintain the growth and continue with it, you have to constantly tap into it. So in terms of the unity in Israel and amongst the Jewish people, I encourage, I implore people to take upon themselves some kind of resolution, the Kabbalah they could do in less than 5 minutes. What I recommend, and this is what I did, is the laws of Shmiras HaLashon, of guarding your speech. This is what speaks to me most. And I took upon myself a Kabbalah a year ago to study 5 minutes of halacha. The one that I choose to do is Shmiras HaLashon. Every day. That was what I did, and I did it usually before bed. And then this past Rosh Hashanah, the Kabbalah I took on was the same thing, but before lunch. So I have it once before, like in the beginning of the day, once in the end of the day. Twice a day to tap in. And it's so impactful. First of all, it helps with consistency, and it taps me back into when I look over and I see my Rebbeim davening. When I'm in the deepest part of Shmona Esrei on the holiest day, I tap back into that, and it's extremely impactful. So in terms of the unity, I'm not sure what it is or how to get people to do it, but there has to be a consistent reminder, you know.
Well, Yoshi, I'll tell you, the Jewish people are listening to the podcast. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And this is a beautiful message that we should take this unity that we collectively as a nation have developed over the course of this terrible conflict and spend 5 minutes a day to try to perpetuate that feeling. And I think your example is a beautiful example to avoid speaking negatively about another person. Lashon Hara, the evil talk. It's a beautiful thing because that fosters love. And, you know, there's an incredible book, as you know, A Lesson a Day, which was authored by your Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Berkowitz. And that's a beautiful thing. There you go. There you go. It was in Gaza with Yoshi. And it's a beautiful message to send to everyone. Get that book. It's less than 5 minutes. And study on behalf of the Jewish people and the perpetuation of the unity that we developed. We should continue that, please God. Yoshi, I want to encourage you and remind you that the whole nation's behind you. The whole people are behind you. We love you. We're appreciative of you. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It was unbelievable. You were an absolute superstar. And we hope that you're safe, that all your friends are safe, everyone in the unit is safe, all of our soldiers are safe, and of course, the hostages, Yehoshua Mordechai ben Shoshana Blima, that's your name. Please God, everyone will pray for you, pray for your success. You and your brother, David Israel.
And my brother, yeah.
Yes, Ben Shoshana Blima. Everyone should be safe. Everyone should be strong. Everyone should be healthy. Everyone should come back in one piece, in spirit and mind, in body and soul. And may we defeat our enemies, uproot Hamas, save the hostages, and hopefully bring back peace to our people and only hear good news from our brethren.
Amen. I want to just share with you one last tiny thing while we're talking about the Shmiras HaLashon is that the Chafetz Chaim in his Hakdama to Sefer Chafetz Chaim, he brings, I think, 5 proofs that Lashon Hara is the reason that we are still in exile and don't have the Beis HaMikdash. And he encourages that Shmiras HaLashon and guarding our tongue is the way that we rectify this. You see, every Tisha B'Av that we mourn the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, we're not just mourning that it was destroyed 1900 plus years ago, but we're mourning that it's been essentially redestroyed every year, because the moment that we're worthy of it, it will be rebuilt immediately. And so if it hasn't been rebuilt, it's as if it's destroyed again. The Chafetz Chaim brings simple logic that if it was destroyed because of sinas chinam, of baseless hatred, which is a result of lashon hara, of evil speech, then the only way to rectify this is by guarding our tongue. And this is valuable regardless of how religious somebody is, or even if they're not Jewish. I think that when you meet somebody, you kind of make a judgment of them quite quickly, and the quickest thing is when they talk. The first thing is how they look, how they present themselves, but once they talk, that's when you're able to really see who this person is. When somebody has refined their speech, you could very quickly see who you were dealing with. That's got to be the thing that I look up to most about my Rosh Hashiva, Rav Berkowitz. He's so careful about what he says, and I really try to mimic him and be thoughtful in the same way. So, Bezrat Hashem, through Shmiras HaLashon, we will witness and bring the building of the third Beis HaMikdash and the coming of Mashiach, B'mehera B'yameinu.
Anyone who's listening to this, go get yourself the book, A Lesson a Day. You can read it in less than 5 minutes, and it goes through all the laws and all of the lessons, really, of the Chafetz Chaim that he wrote about the Shmiras HaLashon. It will change your life. I read it as well as you did, Yoshi, and I love that clarion call. May we only hear good news from you, Yoshi. We hope to hear only good things, to give us an update on how things are going. To give the podcast an update, we'll do, please God, another update. Thank you so much for all that you do on behalf of Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael Chai. It's alive. It's vibrant. And it's going to get stronger, please God. Thank you so much for joining the podcast, sharing your story with us. This was amazing. You were fantastic. This is your first episode. Please God, many more.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care, my dear. After we finished recording, Yoshi sent me a voice note, and he's like, "Oh, I have this great story that I forgot to say." So I said, we'll add it to the podcast. So here is the voice note from Yoshi at the end of the podcast. And of course, my email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com.
There was actually one story that I had forgotten to mention to you, but a guy had actually gotten shot right next to me. He was about 10 feet away from me. Oh man, there's actually some really good stuff I forgot to mention to you, but that's okay. It's okay. Basically, there was a weapons factory that would produce a lot of rockets that were sent over to Israel, and we got the privilege of blowing it up. And while we were there, so one of the guys actually got shot. Baruch Hashem, he's okay. But he was basically 10 feet away from me. He got shot, and then about, a few minutes afterward, we had to then run to a different place, where I actually had to run from this hole in the wall where he was shot from by a sniper, across just open field, what we call shetach hashmada, and take cover elsewhere. And I get to the opening in the wall, and it's just like I'm about to run into shetach hashmada with a sniper. And I said out loud, I said, "Hashem, please protect me," and I ran out. And there was some fear, but it was very mild. And that was one of the moments where I really I knew that God determines. And that was to me very comforting. And I am curious how my friends dealt with that moment, because they were definitely nervous. We all ran very fast during that dilug. But that was a very meaningful experience. I don't know if meaningful, mashmauti though, but it was a significant experience.